You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob.
This is Inside the Village for the week of May 17th, 2023. I'm Scott Sexsmith with Michael Friscolanti, Editor-in-Chief here at Village Media. Derek Turner, Executive Producer, also with us. Good to see you, pal.
Nice to see you as well.
This is breaking news. New jacket.
No,
You look dynamite, man.
I've been wearing the same bloody coat every show, I think, since we started. Well, let's be honest, they haven't given us a coat rack yet to hang our jackets, so I just leave one here for the weekly show. And
We don't ask for much.
I know, it's
really.
like a hanger. We're just looking for a hanger.
A place
You can even hang it right here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we're asking for.
It's not like we're after the private jet, the company jet.
It's those small things I'm holding out for, right?
Yeah.
I will not bring any more of my jackets in until there's a place to hang them. There's 100 dogs at this office.
At least
Did you
100.
see my one jacket that was on the back of my chair?
I see it because you're always stealing my lint roller.
Well, I gave up. There's not enough lint rollers in the world to take the dog hair off that jacket.
It's crazy.
It's not that it fits me anywhere anyway. That's why I left it there. But
You look
still,
good, though.
Thanks. I appreciate
Shout
it.
out to the great staff at Moore's.
Yes,
for hooking us up the way that they
for
do.
finding jackets large enough.
They do make them. You just got to look hard. Okay, Leafs are out now. Oilers are out. We had Ron McLean on a couple of weeks ago, and Ron thought this may have been the year for the Leafs, but apparently not.
Yeah, it's like anyone who ever says that ever is wrong. But yeah, it's I'm not a huge hockey fan, but I obviously tune in more when the Leafs are around and the Oilers were. I was watching them. You're rooting for the Canadian team, but like who's left now? Again, Florida's there.
Derek's
Dallas.
the resident hockey expert. Seattle, Florida, Dallas.
Yeah.
And
Seattle-
Vegas. We're missing Vegas.
And Seattle and Dallas.
Expansion teams.
Yeah, but one of those will be out by the time
Right,
this goes
yeah.
to air. But still,
Yeah.
neither of them are. I don't mind the expansion team. That's kind of exciting.
Well, wasn't it the first year that Vegas was in that they went to the final?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
I mean, that's a Cinderella story right there.
just on the Leafs. I just don't get it, man.
Love the article that had the Sault Ste. Marie connections with that series.
Yes, tons.
Yeah, it was crazy. So Paul Maurice, head coach of Florida. Who else? Kyle Dubas, GM of the Leafs.
Yeah.
Nick Cousins, who scored the overtime goal, who played for the Greyhounds.
Yes, under Sheldon Keefe, who was the head coach of the Leafs.
You can't write that stuff.
Well, we did.
Apparently you can write this stuff, and you did very well. Speaking of writing, I know watching hockey wasn't the big thing for you and the team this weekend. As we shift to the first word to Frisco, a very scary situation last Friday in Sault Ste. Marie with a missing 11-year-old.
Yeah, if you were anywhere in Northern Ontario, I think you were following this story. We cover stuff every day, right? But then once in a while, there's just a massive story that captures the community's attention, and this was one of them. This little girl, 11-year-old, went missing from St. Catherine Outdoor Learning Center on Friday morning. They searched all through the afternoon, and as sun started to set, she still wasn't found. The helicopters were circling overhead. The dog teams were out there. So obviously this became a much bigger story. I mean, the reality is people do go missing, and they're often found in a little while. That happens. It does happen. Police put out releases like that all the time, but this didn't happen here. So our team, Alex Flood from Sault today, spent the night up there on Friday. Ken Armstrong also joined in on Saturday. We had a ton of important coverage, and it's one of those moments in local journalism where you realize that the community's hanging off every word that we're printing on our site. They're checking over and over again to see what's happening. So I'm proud of the team. I thought we had really strong, accurate, good coverage. We were telling people what they needed to know. We were updating them on what the police were telling us and what the family was telling us. And what was amazing about it is in late afternoon on Saturday, we started getting word that she had been found. And Ken was at the scene when the OPP helicopter landed and was the only one to get a beautiful video of little Ruby Kerr running out of the chopper into her parents' arms.
Wow.
And you just hear the emotion of people who were there, right? And I know, like, it gave me goosebumps, a little bit teary eyes when I was watching that for the first time, right? And it just makes you so proud because that's what local journalism is all about. It connects the community in good times and bad. And this was not a good time. Those people were really, really nervous. A lot of people had a sleepless night on Friday. Strangers who didn't know this little girl. And I was really proud of the team because we were definitely the go-to source for this story as it unfolded. And it just makes you feel good about what you do. We didn't find her, obviously. We're not the searchers. They did all the work. But we play an important role in keeping people up to date.
And I think certainly the best news is all too often with stories of this nature, a lot of times they don't end the way that you'd hope that they do, and this one did.
Absolutely, and you're gonna lie if you weren't nervous about that after one night. She was out there for a full night, right? Luckily, it didn't get below zero when she was out there, so there was always this feeling that she could be okay. Ultimately, they found her about 9 kilometers north of this location, which that's a long hike that she took, right? And just you could just feel the entire city breathe a sigh of relief when that news came out that she was found. So definitely, people were feeling good on Saturday night that ended in the right way.
Absolutely. Well done. A beautiful reunion between a nurse and a patient at Sick Kids Hospital from many years ago.
Yeah, we all know Sean Gibson's a great friend of the show, a fantastic reporter in Barrie. Did a beautiful story about a nurse who 54 years ago, I guess it was Nursing Week, right, last week. 54 years earlier, she was a nurse at Sick Kids Hospital, and she had some pictures of her holding a baby who happened to share the same last name as her. They were not related. And she had posted it on Facebook a couple times over the years, but this time she actually posted it with a name, thinking maybe I can find out whatever happened to this girl, right? And sure enough, the power of social media was put out there. It didn't take long before, with some help from a friend she calls a good sleuth, found who this lady was, and now 54 years old, this baby. And what was great about the story is she was so happy to connect with the nurse because she learned a little bit more about what she was doing there, right? Her parents had since passed away, and she hadn't really seen pictures from that time period of her life. And she said just to see herself on the computer smiling so hard as a baby, it brought tears to her eyes, right? And we're storytellers. That's what we do. We're telling stories about people in the community, and this was just a great one and an excellent read. And I'm just a fantastic read. Another example of a beautiful story. To Timmins we go, and Quilts for Survivors. Yes, Amanda Robsky McCall's written a beautiful story about the group Quilts for Survivors up in Timmins, and they'd launched recently last year with the goal of making a quilt for every residential school survivor who's still alive. And they recently mailed out their 3,000th quilt, which is just an unbelievable accomplishment when you think about it. And she really got in there and told the story of the people who are working hard to do this. And just another great example of the great local journalism. This is a story that's happening right in their community, and she's told it not only for her community, but it's been shared across our chain, and it's a beautiful story. All right, pal, coming up on today's episode of Inside the Village, we're joined by a guy who doesn't give a lot of interviews, but he's giving us one, and that's Vic Fedeli, the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. Big title, big business card. Well, we do it all in this show, right? Last week we were talking about Gordon Lightfoot. Today we're going to talk to a provincial cabinet minister. We try to tackle all different issues here on Inside the Village. All right, it's going to be a great chat. Vic Fedeli joins us next when Inside the Village returns right after this.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Welcome back to Inside the Village with Michael Friscolanti, Editor-in-Chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Very pleased to have the Minister of Economic Development for the province of Ontario join us on the program today, Vic Fedeli. Vic, welcome to Inside the Village. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Scott. Hey, Michael.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Now, Vic, you may have noticed we don't wear ties on this program, but when I knew you were coming on the show today, I dug through the closet to find my only yellow tie.
I'll take it any day.
In your honor. So we're not actually wearing it, but we were thinking of you. Okay, let's dive right in here, Vic, and start with the newly announced Volkswagen electric vehicle plant in St. Thomas. Obviously, the big news that everybody's talking about: up to $13 billion in subsidies from the feds and $500 million in direct incentives from your provincial government. What specifically, Vic, are those incentives, and why does the Ford government think this is a good deal for everyone in Ontario, not just the people of St. Thomas?
Well, just to start off, I want to say thanks, guys. It's great to be here. And, when we celebrate Volkswagen, it really is the deal, the deal that any ECDev minister would dream of. And we started it about a year ago. It took almost a year of negotiations. And the province was obviously deeply involved in every level of our side of it, which is the land, the jobs, the training, police, fire, roads, all of these things. So we have $500 million in direct subsidy to direct investment, I'm going to call it, in Volkswagen. The feds have $700 million in a direct capital investment, but we have hundreds of millions then in the roads and sewers and electrical work and police and fire and such. And then on the outside perimeter would be $13 billion from the feds, matching the American federal government's IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which pays battery manufacturers a price per battery. And so the federal government matched that in a deal we did not see, but we're aware of. And why it's a good deal? Because, when you look only a few years ago, Reuters announced, one of the news agencies announced that there's going to be $300 billion spent on electric vehicle production, batteries, and all of the attachments. And zero was planned for Canada. Not one penny was planned in Canada. And we were seeing this downward cycle of auto in Ontario when we got elected, and we decided to step in and step up. And it involves incentives worldwide. Every jurisdiction in the world, if you want to play in the electric vehicle space, that's what you're going to do. Not to play in that space, we would lose the 100,000 auto workers that we have in Ontario as the Ford Edge, let's say. When that production run is over, there's no more vehicle. So we opted to get in the electric vehicle space, and that's why we supported Ford, GM, and Honda, Stellantis, and all the way down the line. This is generational. Your kids' will be working at Volkswagen.
You hit on a good point, Minister, right? Because if I remember correctly, when you were an opposition politician, you spent a lot of time kind of railing against so-called corporate welfare. Is this different? Is this a change of heart for you?
It's not so much a change of heart as the reality of the auto sector. We saw 300,000 jobs lost in Ontario before we got elected. We saw high taxes, high energy rates, too much red tape. So when we got elected, we lowered the cost of doing business by $8 billion a year. $8 billion a year. That's every year going forward. So that's less revenue from the government on a short-term basis, right? We pulled on every lever we can. We lowered taxes. We cut hydro rates for commercial and industrial. We did all kinds of things to lower the cost of doing business by $8 billion. But in the end of the day, our revenue went from $154 billion the year we got elected to $204 billion this year. So by lowering costs, by temporarily lowering your revenue by $8 billion, we now have $50 billion in revenue more, because we got heavy into auto and supporting the auto sector. 700 parts makers, 500 tool and die and mold makers, 300 connected and autonomous companies. There's just too much at stake not to be supportive. You can't be ideologically ruled in something like this.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask you about the news of the day. You mentioned Stellantis. They're the parent company of Chrysler, Jeep, Fiat. They announced plans last year to build an EV battery plant in Windsor, and you're seeing the headlines today in light of the Volkswagen deal. They've actually stopped construction on the plant, and they're threatening to pull the plug altogether unless the federal government renegotiates. The Toronto Star reported on Friday that there were mounting concerns among your government at Queen's Park about whether you'll have to pony up some more cash to prevent Stellantis from moving the plant out of Windsor. Are you going to have to sweeten this deal, Minister Fedeli? And I guess if so, are you worried that this could be a trend where more companies come out and say, hey, I want a better deal than I already had?
So on the Stellantis deal, both the feds and the province were in to invest in the Stellantis, LG Stellantis deal in the exact same way we were into Volkswagen. Exactly. When Stellantis deal was done, there was no IRA, no Inflation Reduction Act. When the IRA was announced, we understand that Stellantis and the federal government began negotiating, and based on the release from Stellantis today that said we need the Canadian government to honor the commitment they made, we then learn, of course, that there really is a commitment between the federal government and Stellantis to either make them whole or somehow they they've gone in on the IRA. What we're saying is, look, if there's more that Ontario can do with the community in Windsor, roads, electricity, just like we did with Volkswagen, we're more than willing to step up and have a look at that area. But when it comes to the IRA, this is multi-billions of dollars. That's federal government to federal government. Mm-hmm. We'll go head to head with any state any day and duke it out with them and win. Almost every time we've won. We'll continue to do that. But when it comes to the IRA, that really is a swim lane that belongs to the federal government.
So you're confident? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and so what we're saying is, you've got the federal government has to. They've been a great partner with us from the very beginning, but they have to honor their commitment that they made to Stellantis, whatever that commitment is, for the families in Windsor, for the workers in Windsor, and honor the commitment that you made.
And is there more that the provincial government could be doing or should be doing?
Not on the IRA. That's right. That's completely a federal to federal program. On operating costs, we're involved in the capital expenditure. And again, much like we're doing on the Volkswagen deal, we'll get involved with the community on roads, bridges, other infrastructure that's necessary to help the Stellantis deal along. And that's our role. That's the province's role.
Vic, you've said in recent days that the sleeper story of Ontario's massive auto industry transition is lithium hydroxide, a critical component of those batteries. You've also hinted that there are 2 or 3 very good prospects for bringing a lithium hydroxide facility to the province with a particular eye on Northern Ontario. Can you give us the scoop on that? This is your chance to break news and make the day for 2 or 3 communities. What can you tell us?
Well, I normally wouldn't have talked about a sleeper story, but I'm so confident that, look, there's a worldwide demand for lithium. We've got 2 battery plants here in Ontario now that are going to need lithium. So we have lithium in the ground in northwestern Ontario, in Red Lake and other areas north of Thunder Bay. They're going to have to take it out of the ground. We're going to help them with that. That's going to create thousands of jobs. But once you get it out of the ground, you've got to have a conversion facility. You've got to convert that into something called spodumene and then into lithium hydroxide. It's a liquid. It looks like you dole it out with an eyedropper. And that's kind of how you do it in a battery. They got to have it done. They got to have it made. The Premier has said several times, we're not letting the lithium rocks leave Ontario. They're going to be processed here. We want value added in Northern Ontario. So I would say somewhere around Thunder Bay, if I had to guess, if I had to speculate, they're grooming space there and sort of mentally and financially for lithium hydroxide facilities. We're going to have at least 1, maybe 2, maybe more. I mean, I think we have the bandwidth for 1 or 2.
Could we have an announcement pretty soon, do you think?
No, I don't think it'll be pretty soon. We still don't have any lithium out of the ground. Mm-hmm. And, there's a couple of really good lithium companies in northwestern Ontario. And once they're ready to make formal announcements about, a date to get the rock out of the ground, you'll likely see pretty close after that a commitment by multinationals to assist in the lithium hydroxide. This is going to be a $1 billion plus plant. Mm-hmm. So I know all of the prospects, the lithium prospects in the north are looking for a dance partner, and they're pairing up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And it'll take a long time to build. So by the time, the mine gets announced and the lithium facility gets announced, they should, match up to open at the same time.
Sticking with Northern Development, Mr. Fedeli, Premier Ford said he isn't backing down from your government's commitment to develop the Ring of Fire. Despite threats of litigation and opposition from some First Nations leaders. I think it was this last week, the direct quote from the Premier was, "We're building that Ring of Fire as sure as I'm talking to you." I think people wonder, why is this such a priority for your government? Can you explain that?
There's massive wealth for everybody in Ontario, including the First Nations, to open up that Ring of Fire. I've been there 5 times. I can tell you, we're all looking at the chromite, which is necessary to make stainless steel. But underneath that chromite is a boatload of nickel. And when you have the national governments around the world, including ours here in Canada, saying we're making all EVs, by whatever year, you're going to need a ton of nickel, battery grade nickel, and you're either going to get it from Asia or Indonesia, other places, or you're going to have ethically sourced, sustainably produced nickel from Canada. Will be sought after by everybody in the world. We got to get it out of the ground. We got to get the road built, and our First Nations partners are doing the environmental assessment of the road as we speak. So I think we're doing fabulously. I was at PDAC, the Prospector and Developer Show, just before COVID, the week COVID broke out. We made a big announcement with the First Nation, and now the first Prospector Show that's back, we made a further announcement with our First Nation partners.
According to the Premier's publicly posted calendars, Vic, it looks like you're the only Ontario cabinet minister to have a standing bi-weekly meeting with Doug Ford. What's your relationship like with the Premier, and maybe what can you tell Ontarians about him that we don't already know?
Well, I didn't know that was that was true. That published calendar, I'm the only one with a standing meeting. As you can tell, Premier Ford and I are both lifelong business people. It's really important to him that we get the ECDEV message strong. And look what we did by lowering the cost of doing business, which we both agreed on. And I'll tell you a fun one in a second about him. Lowering the cost of business, we were able to land all these deals, $25 billion. We went from zero to $25 billion in auto alone. We did $3 billion in life sciences in the last 2.5 years. Billions in tech, just millions of dollars, $1 billion reshoring businesses. It's unbelievable. So we talk business. I sit beside him in the ledge as well. We usually spend our time chatting about business prospects, how much we should be looking at in terms of support, all of these kinds of things. So one day we were in I think we were in Washington together, and we were in the back of the SUV, and he got a call from somebody who was pretty irate that the province had bought something out of province. And he said to me, buddy, we got to fix this. And this, he said, if you don't, and then he described what he would be doing to me if I didn't fix it. And then he calls himself the 800-pound gorilla. Buddy, you're going to have the 800-pound gorilla all over you. And so that's the relationship that we have. And he in the back of that vehicle, we developed in our mind a new agency that's now open called Supply Ontario. And it's like the purchasing department for the province. They buy $30 billion a year in goods. And here's what came out of that SUV. We have BOBBY, Building Ontario Business Initiative. And that means by law now that Supply Ontario has to buy 10%, minimum of 10% of everything they buy must be made in Ontario. So this is a real boon for life science companies and companies who are involved in bidding on projects for the province. So, that's the kind of relationship we have. What would I tell you? He leads with his heart on every single thing he does. He leads with his heart. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Fedeli, I have to ask you about the Greenbelt. Obviously, it's been in the headlines a lot. We read about it a lot. We've heard so much about the Premier's daughter's wedding and some issues around there. The Integrity Commissioner and the Auditor General are both investigating the Greenbelt changes made last fall by your government, which were to the benefit of multiple developers with personal and political connections, not only to the Premier, but to the party. In your role, you're so focused on economic development, has this been a distraction at all? I mean, how much of a distraction have these investigations and these headlines been to the work your government's trying to do?
Well, I think what's really important is the fact that, take Volkswagen as for instance, we're going to build communities around the thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. That happened after we made the announcement that we need to build 1.5 million homes in the province of Ontario in the next 10 years. So, what is missing in the Greenbelt message is that we're adding over 9,000 acres to the Greenbelt. So they talk about taking acres away, but we're adding 9,000. So it's actually growing by 2,000 acres. So, I just, keep on the momentum that we have. We keep doing deals. Premier and I, again, that's all we talk about together is the deals that we have that we're working on worldwide. I start every day off for the boss by sending him what I call his 1-a-day vitamin, and it's the it is that he I send him a text every day, the name of a company, how many billion or how many millions they're investing, which city they're investing in, how many employees they're hiring, and whether we have any skin in the game or not. Every single day. And I tell you that because it not only does it tell you the kind of things we talk about, but it also is a message that nothing's changed in Ontario. Every day we have a new or an expansion. And these are in the millions of dollars. Every single day. That's what's happening.
Being a Northern Ontario MPP, Vic, you know that there's been longstanding concerns about safety on northern highways, especially highways 11 and 17 in the dead of winter. What has your government done to address that issue, in particular the concerns over the level of training of transport truck drivers?
While we've seen the levels change, it would be the winter maintenance level that we've improved. I think that's Minister Caroline Mulroney has done that. I'm very, very pleased as a Northerner to see the changes that were made there. I would also look forward on Highway 11 North, just north of North Bay. We're going to have this 2+1, which is a European system of passing lanes. It's rather unique. It sounds more complicated than it actually is. It looks pretty simple on paper. And I'm very eager to see the 2+1 maneuver happening soon. With respect to transport, that's probably a question out of my area of expertise, and I would refer you on that one to our transport folks to give you the technical guidance about what we're doing.
Minister Fedeli, you're clearly a man who seems to enjoy his job. I think you love being the pitch man for the Ontario government. The way you've talked today about the different businesses and how you're following them and sharing them with the Premier. I guess my dumb question is, how much do you love this job? What do you love the most about it? And do you miss being the finance minister? I know a lot of people were surprised when you were not in that position anymore. Are you happy to be doing this job compared to that one?
Oh, come on. I mean, first of all, the Premier, the coach of the team, moves players around. A coach moves players around all the time. And he knows that I'm, as he'll say, oh, buddy, you're the best salesman I've ever met. And, we work so well together on sales that I'm right where I belong. When I was the mayor of the city of North Bay, I formed the mayor's office of economic development. And, we ran the city in a business-like way, which is, good, efficient. We watched the city's finances turn around. So we're doing about pretty much the same thing here. I can't wait to get up every morning and send the Premier his 1-a-day. And when he answers, we have a little code that he uses when he answers. If it's great, that means not enough jobs there or something. It's a fun little code that I know exactly what he's thinking. And at night when he calls, it's usually oh, buddy, that was such a good one today. When we made a Moderna announcement in southwestern Ontario a couple of weeks ago, and he called that night. And he goes, "Oh, buddy, that was so nice to land that." And sometimes he's involved on every deal. There's no question. He's what I call the closer. Absolutely, the guy you bring in to close the deals. There's just no hesitation that there's no better closer in the world than Premier Doug Ford.
Well, and you always want to beware of the 800-pound gorilla. Vic, great to see you again from one North Bayite to another. Good to see you. Hopefully it's not another 30 years before we connect again. Appreciate your time today.
No kidding, Scott. This was great. I'll come on anytime with you guys. I look forward to it.
Love
Good to know. Next week will be perfect.
Yeah. I'll check my watch.
Vic Fedeli, the Minister of Economic Development for the province of Ontario. Thanks, Vic.
Thanks, guys.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Back to wrap on Inside the Village with Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Great chat with Vic. Always good to catch up and get... I love the behind-the-scenes stuff. The story of the 800-pound gorilla. I mean, that's gold.
Yeah, it was a great story. It is interesting to hear those kind of behind-the-scenes of text messages getting traded. It's also good for our listeners to know behind the scenes around here. It takes a while to get these interviews lined up. You'd reached out to Fedeli's office a few weeks ago, asked him to come on and talk about some things. And interesting that he comes on in the middle of a very newsworthy item. This the plant in Windsor today saying that they're going to stop construction, and lots of behind the scenes going on at Queen's Park and on Parliament Hill, and with the federal government trying to figure out how to keep this project on track. A lot of balls in the air, obviously, but again, I'm not a political expert, right? But clearly, that's one of the things that voters like about the Ford government. They like that they are the business government, that they are constantly pitching and pushing the idea that they are creating jobs in the province, and this is the government you need to make sure that we have good-paying jobs in communities across the province. And you can see that just how much Vic Fedeli loves that role.
Oh,
right?
Does he ever?
I mean, when he says he's a natural salesman, you can just see it, right? I mean, this guy's been doing this for a long, long time. Back when he was a North Bay politician or North Bay, the mayor up there. Right? Yep. So yeah, it's an enjoyable conversation to have a chance to have a one-on-one like that, because oftentimes with political scrums with reporters and a politician, questions are just being yelled back and forth. There's not a lot of time to have an in-depth chat like that. Yeah, and we're certainly open to have other MPPs, other MPs. You can reach out to us, itv@villagemedia.ca. We'd love to sit down and have a chat like we just had with Vic. All right. Great show this week. Let's do it up again next week. You can catch all back episodes wherever you find your favorite podcasts across the Village Media Network and at insidethevillage.ca. For Derek Turner, executive producer here at Inside the Village, and Michael Friscolanti, editor-in-chief at Village Media, I'm Scott Sexsmith. We will talk to you next Wednesday.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe, provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.